About 6 months ago, we did a little bit of a preview on this channel for a new Game Boy Color game coming out called Zephyr's Pass. Publisher Incubate Games is back at it again, this time releasing a previously unreleased Game Boy Advance game called Kien. No, this isn't some sort of Spanish Abbott and Costello bit, instead it's Age of Games' Kien, a Game Boy Advance RPG that wasn't canceled just once or even twice, it was canceled on 3 separate occasions. But before we get canceled here, feel free to go over and support us over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. For those of you that don't know, I Dream of Indie Games is our main YouTube channel, but that Patreon will support us both there as well as here over at I Dream of Retro Games. There are multiple tiers to pick from based on what your budget is and how much you'd like to support us, and you can gain perks such as gaining exclusive access to our Discord server, access to some early videos, maybe even some free games depending on which tier that you pick. So once again, it's patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, and it will help us out greatly, and thanks in advance. Speaking of advance, as I mentioned before, Kien is a Game Boy Advance game that you will soon be able to purchase coming early Q2 of this year from Incubate Games. I found it quite interesting just even the history of the making of this game. They were the first development kit released for the Game Boy Advance in Italy, and even to this day, you don't really think of Italy as a big hotbed for game development. This was back in the early 2000s, and when asked to look back at the development process, the developer said it was foolish, idealistic as young 20-somethings. It was romantic, devastating, and heroic all at the same time. Development started with about 500 euros of cash and their own computers. They often spent long nights together eating and drinking, and it was all of their first time trying to make a game. None of them had any real development experience. Yes, there were some Flash games that were made, but this was the first time they were trying to make an honest game for a handheld console, or any console for that matter. Developer Fabio Balsanti said, "I'll be honest, Kien was not in particular on any aesthetic level, a game in line with my tastes and my nature. But the team and some quote-unquote experts from another Italian company of veterans, also in quotes, pushed in the direction of the development of a classic action platform video game, using cartoon-deformed graphics with only light RPG elements, and I gave in to their firm beliefs based on theory and on solid market research. Do you know what happened to that company that gave us this advice at the beginning of our story? Failed in 2002. Compromises may have been made, but there was still hard work done to be able to complete the game. And it was finished, but over the course of a few years, it was picked up and dropped by a number of publishers, including DSi Games, and despite being complete, it never made it to store shelves. Despite not having a publisher and being officially released, it did make it out to a few of the review publications, with both Pocket Games and Nintendo Power posting reviews. Both of them felt justified in their 60% ratings, with the former citing the lack of depth and secrets as a bit of a turnoff, and the latter criticizing the game's difficulty. The developer felt that it was important to remember that this was in development during the life of the Game Boy Advance, where difficulty wasn't viewed as a positive like it was 10 years prior, or even 10 years after. It was at this time when the game was circulating for review purposes that the ROM was dumped and then circulated around on the internet, and unfortunately it was pulled from the Game Boy Advance's release lineup. The publisher stated at that time that it would be too hard for a new IP from a third party to make enough of a splash on the system. The high cost of cart production at the time was a major factor, and they felt that basically, unless it was already an established IP or something from Nintendo, it just wouldn't sell. As I touched upon before, it is an action platformer game with some RPG elements, and it's even self-described as a sort of pre-Souls-like game. You can pick from 2 different characters, a warrior and a mage. The warrior does hand-to-hand combat using things like a sword, axe, club, or spear, and the mage uses magic projectiles, which are basically orbs that they fire out. You can pick up specials along the way, which are basically projectiles for both, and the warrior also has the added ability to throw his equipped weapon. At first, Kien will seem like any other action platformer that you would have played of the same era, but what you will quickly find out is that it does actually have quite a bit of a difficulty level, even right from the beginning. Right away, enemies can be difficult to beat, and you can level up, but it takes a long time to do so. There's also a lot of trial and error that comes with the gameplay in terms of doing exploration of the levels. There are multiple paths that you can take, and you might get a little bit lost trying to figure out which way to go next. Throughout the levels, you'll also be collecting coins, which essentially give you armor. The more coins that you have, the stronger your armor is, but you are limited based on what level your character is. Also, obviously, whenever you get hit, you will lose those coins. Putting aside the fact that it's kind of strange that it's coins that this is tied to, it's actually quite cool as you get higher up in levels, and so when you get to certain points, your armor actually changes the way it looks, and they have some really cool designs later on. You will also find different gems that can be collected, and every 30 that you get will give you an extra life. There are no continues or saves, but it does have a password system. This makes it a bit difficult because there's a lot that can be done while playing this game, and especially if you're playing handheld, that's a lot of a time commitment before you'll actually get to another password. I found that it took quite some time to get through a bunch of the levels, and especially to level up, so I was spending quite a bit of time before I was even given the next password. And also, if you die on that boss, then you're not going to even get that password, so you're not going to make any progress at all, which really adds to the difficulty level. Right now, the digital version is not available for pre-order, and it seems that the only way to be able to play it will be on the physical cartridge, which means you're going to have to play it with this original game design. The game was definitely fun, but I felt that it's asking a bit too much of people, especially on a handheld, to commit that much time at once. If you are a fan of the Game Boy Advance and that style of graphics and music, thankfully, Kien does not disappoint there. All the sprites are nice and big with plenty of detail and colorful graphics, and the music is catchy as well. If you do end up playing on a display bigger than the normal Game Boy Advance, obviously the limitations of the hardware will show, and you're going to see some of the blockiness to the graphics, but one could also argue that's part of the charm of the design. So in the end, if you're looking for a game that's a fun action platformer that has a lot of exploration and trial and error gameplay and a high difficulty level, then Kien will be the game for you. It's going to be available Q2 of this year for $59.99 from Incubate Games. For that price, you're going to get a sealed box, a clear gray cartridge, a clear black cartridge protector, an instruction booklet, and a Kien sticker sheet. I think it's really cool that 20 plus years later, this game has had a resurrection spell cast upon it, and you'll finally be able to play it for yourself legally and to the benefit of the developer. While the game may not be for everybody, especially due to its high difficulty level, I personally had a lot of fun with it despite all its quirks, and with the long, hard process that the developer had to go through to get this game out there, I think that they deserve our support. Thanks again for watching and for supporting us as well. Is this a game that you think that you'll be picking up? I think it's kind of cool that we have this little niche market out there of being able to release physical versions of old and new games alike. Once again, you can support us over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, and I'll see you in the next video.